And and good morning to you. My name is Kunle Ologe, marriage counselor and founder of the Marriage Seal Academy, and you're welcome to Marriage Q and A. Did I just say that? Well, Marriage Q and A is what we do every week. You're welcome to Friday Live, and I'm so excited to have every one of you. In faith, I greet you all. Good morning to you. And this is a very interesting time. Of course, once every week we come here on YouTube to teach you something on marriage. And today we're going to be talking about helping your spouse navigate low esteem. So one thing you want to do is you want to start reaching out to all your family, all your friends, send out this link far and wide and join in so that we can all participate in this so very important class today, helping your spouse to navigate low self-esteem. Now, we're going to start this class, and we only have 1 hour, and we have quite a lot to say today. So we're going to start this class early, and we're going to move very, very fast so that we can cover everything about this particular low self-esteem issue. I've been a counselor now for quite some number of years, and one thing I've realized is that so when one spouse has low self-esteem, it poses a challenge to the other spouse. So it doesn't just pose a challenge to the person with the low self-esteem, it poses a challenge to every other person. And so it's so important that we get a grasp to do that from there. What is it? Now, low self-esteem is a lack of confidence in one's self-worth. A lack of confidence in one's self-worth. So something just tells you you are not worth what you are. Something tells you you are not there. You are not that person. Something tells you you are not okay. Something tells you you are not smart enough. You are not strong enough. You are not quick enough. That's low self-esteem. It's a lack of confidence. So confident that you can even get the answer. Now, I was telling this story some time ago, and I was telling the story of this famous public speaker, Les Brown. Now, Les Brown told us the story that when he was young, I think probably in elementary school, that he had a teacher who always used to speak down on him. The teacher will always tell him that he was not intelligent, he was not smart, he was dumb. In fact, there's this particular name that he said the teacher used for him. I can't remember that name now. But if I remember, I'll tell you. But the summary of that name is that he was dumb. And so another teacher now came some other time to teach their class. And the teacher asked a question. Everybody else in the class raised up their hands, but Les Brown didn't. And he was wondering, okay, you answer the question. And he said, I can't. And the teacher said, why can't you answer the question? And he said, I'm dumb. And the teacher said, who told you that? And of course, he said, how to not be real. Now, that helped Les Brown to pull himself away from that place that he was. And today, he's one of the greatest public speakers that you have right now in the world. So someone says the video is glitching. Nancy says the video is glitching. Can every other person hear me? If you can hear me clearly, tell me that you can hear me clearly. If it's glitching, please put it there in the comment section that it's glitching so that we can also rectify that. So please, I need everybody who is watching right now, put a comment there and let me know the quality of the video and the audio. Let's be sure that everything is good. Are we sure that everything is good? Is everything good? Is everything good? Okay. So it looks like everything is good. Oh, somebody else says it's glitching. Okay. Can we have a confirmation? Is it good? It's good now? Okay, I think it's okay now. Can we check again and see if it's fine? Can we check to see if it's fine? I need more comments, please. More comments in the comment section so that I can shake it today. Okay, so it says it's much better now. It was glitching about 2 or 3 minutes ago. Thank you, Fong. Thank you very much. Getting better. All right, so let's continue. So I was talking about Les Brown, and I was saying how somebody made him feel low about himself. He had no confidence about himself, and then suddenly somebody else told him something that made him stand up, upright. So that is how self-esteem can mess up a person. Imagine if nobody told him that he was actually smart. Today, he'll probably be somewhere doing some menial job because he just feels that his brain can't do anything good. So that is how self-esteem feel inadequate. They feel unloved, incompetent. In fact, they are afraid of even making mistakes, so they don't try. Something just tells them if you try this thing, you will fail. So they don't even try anything in life. That's not a very... I'm going to try to switch networks, okay? So just give me a minute. Let's switch networks and see if it gets better. And just 1 minute, we're switching networks now to see if it gets better. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Please confirm now if I'm back up. We've switched the networks, and I think that it is much better now. Can we see? Are we back up? All right, great. So those of you who saw it glitching, please confirm now if this is better than what you saw before. So back to what we were talking about. You need a lot of emotional intelligence to be able to deal with the low self-esteem of your spouse. Remember, we're not talking about your own low self-esteem now. We're talking about your husband or your wife who has low self-esteem. So how do you deal with it? So maybe your own self-esteem is okay. It may not be so high, but it's okay. It's not low. But your spouse's own is low. So how do we deal with it? Okay, still confirming if my network is good. Just give me a second. Okay, we seem to be back now, and I'll give you a few minutes to actually confirm if you can see or hear me. This is such an important topic, and I don't know why the network is doing a number on us today. But let's see how we can manage through. We've switched through just in a few minutes. We've switched through 3 networks. So let's see how good this one is. All right, confirmation. Okay, thank you very much. So let's roll on. Beautiful. Okay, so Faith says you can see and hear me, but not moving. Okay, I'm sure it will get better as we go on. Now, I was saying that you need a high level of emotional intelligence to actually deal with your spouse that has so low self-esteem. Now, we're not talking about you. We're talking about your husband or your wife that has low self-esteem, that is not confident in themselves. So how do you deal with it? You need emotional intelligence to be able to actually handle that. Now, let's look at some of the general signs of low self-esteem. When you say a person has low self-esteem, let's look at some general signs, okay? So follow me closely. So one sign is that the person will be extremely critical of himself. So the person will always say negative things about himself. or herself, as the case may be. That is a sign of low self-esteem. So somebody will just tell you, we are not part of those that know how to read book now. So this one you're asking me to read this chapter, I can't read. So that's the person criticizing him. Nobody criticized him or her, but on his own, on her own, there's a lot of criticism in the head. And that is low self-esteem. Another sign of low self-esteem is downplaying or ignoring positive qualities. Downplaying or ignoring positive qualities. Somebody comes and tells you, you're a very good artist. You say, we just dey try, jare, we don't really know how to do this thing. That's downplaying something that is positive. Someone comes to tell you and say, oh, wow, you solved that question so well. He said, man, I just tried though, I just managed. I don't even know how I did it. But you know that you solved it well. Now that is another sign of low self-esteem. All right, so let's move on. And thank you, Faith says that you can see me loud and clear. All right. Another sign of low self-esteem is judging oneself as inferior to others. Judging oneself as inferior to others. So you see people with low self-esteem, they will tell you things like, it is not our type that they are looking for in government. They'll tell you things like, oh, no, we cannot be rich. We're not the rich people. We're the people that are on the ground. Have you heard people saying those kind of things? It may look like humility, right? Low self-esteem may mimic humility, but a lot of the times it's not. It's quite different. So you may see somebody who looks like he's being humble, he doesn't want to be proud, but the reality is that he's covering up low self-esteem. Another one is number 4, using negative words to describe one's self. So the only things that come out of the person's mouth about himself or about herself are negative things. We know fine. I'm not a good speaker. I don't know how to pray. You just use negative words. Say, I'm not very fast. I don't think fast. I'm slow. So the person keeps using negative words about self. And that just gives you an idea that this person probably is suffering from some level of low self-esteem. Another general sign of low self-esteem is somebody who just wants to please everybody. Do you have those kind of people? They are trying to please everybody. They will displease themselves to please people. And this is not being selfless. There's a difference between being selfless and being a people pleaser. Being selfless and being a people pleaser. There are two different things. We're talking about people pleasers. They're just out to make sure everybody is happy with them. That is a tendency or is a sign of low self-esteem. So these are some general signs. These are 5 general signs of low self-esteem. Being extremely critical of oneself, downplaying or ignoring positive qualities, judging oneself as inferior to others, using negative words to describe oneself, people pleasing. These are signs of people who have low self-esteem. And yes, faith. Low self-esteem may mimic humility. So the person actually has low self-esteem, but he tries to portray it as him or her being humble. They're two different things. Okay, so let's now look at some signs that your spouse has low self-esteem. Remember, what we're dealing with here is general. What we first said is about general low self-esteem. Now let's look at your spouse having low self-esteem. By the way, have you invited somebody to watch this video? Please click the like button so that more people can see this. Send the link to somebody to come and watch, and also subscribe. Some of you are here, you're not even subscribed to the channel. There's so much you can get from this channel, so many videos on marriage. So send this out, send the link to family, to friends, to alumni, to church, to everybody that you know. Even your colleagues right there at work where you are, you're just taking 1 hour off. Send it to all of them. While they're working, they can put something in their ear and listen, because this will help a lot of people in all facets of life. Because low self-esteem affects everything. Low self-esteem affects everything. All right, so here are some signs that your spouse has low self-esteem. So let's narrow it down now to your spouse. Number one, if he or she is constantly seeking validation from you. You see how I stretched the constantly, because seeking validation is okay, is natural, is good. But when somebody is constantly seeking validation, and I'm going to explain to you. So when you have a spouse that every time he or she dresses, he's always asking, do I look okay? I don't think I look okay. You remember what we said, the general thing, talking negatively. I don't think I look okay. This clothes does not look fine on me. Constantly always looking for validation. Then when you even tell the person, no, the clothes is okay, say, no, I don't think it's okay. That person, that your spouse, probably has a low self-esteem challenge. Did you get that part? Did you get that part? So constantly seeking validation. Again, seeking validation on its own is okay. But when it's now constant, that's where the problem lies. So constantly seeking validation. Let's move to the next one. How you know that your spouse may have, I say may have, low self-esteem. Number two is taking personal offense to constructive criticism. Taking personal offense to constructive criticism. You know what constructive criticism is, right? So that's not just somebody telling you what you did wrong. That's somebody telling you that this thing is wrong and this is how you can make it right. That's constructive. Destructive criticism will just make the people or the person just push you down and tell you are wrong, you can't do it. But constructive has a mindset to make you or to help you to achieve that thing you want to achieve. So when your spouse, you are trying to help your spouse to grow, and your spouse takes personal offense, as in this kind of, how can you be the one to tell me this kind of thing? And you're just trying to tell the spouse, this is how to do this particular thing. Check it out. That person may be suffering from low self-esteem. Let's move on. The next sign that your spouse, your own spouse, may be suffering from low self-esteem is questioning your faithfulness due to insecurities. Questioning your faithfulness due to insecurities. Now, let me explain this. So insecurity means when your spouse, any small thing, any little thing that happens between you and the opposite sex, your spouse is already worried. You know, there are some people who their wives go to work and they are calling the wife like every 1 hour. The wife is at work or working. They pick up their phone and every 1 hour they are calling so what are you doing now? So where are you now? Who is with you? The who is with you gang. The people who are always asking who is there with you every hour, every 2 hours, every 3 hours. That is serious insecurity. And that is a sign of low self-esteem. You go out for an office function, your wife will be asking her, so who are the people that were there? Were there ladies in the function? Of course there will be ladies in the function. It's an office function. Everybody is there. But you see the wife asking, how many women were there? Are you sure there were men there, or was it only you and the woman? That is serious insecurity. Very serious one that needs attention. So that's a sign that your spouse has low self-esteem. And I greet you, Chinonso. I greet you all the way from the US. Good day to you. All right. Another sign that your spouse has low self-esteem is when your spouse withholds affection just to protect himself or herself from being vulnerable. When your spouse withholds affection to prevent himself or herself from being vulnerable. I'll explain. So your spouse is afraid that if I keep saying, I love you, I love you, I love you may take it for granted and walk over his head, in quotes. That kind of person has low self-esteem. Your spouse is feeling that if I'm now hugging him, he comes back every day and I hug him. Won't that now, he will now be feeling that I love him so much. No, 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 I can't be doing that. So because of that, she's not hugging you. Sign of low self-esteem. Your spouse knows that you need some certain preparation before you get to work as a wife because you are dealing with so many things. And then inside him, he says, no, if I show her this kind of affection and I'm just helping her pack her things, one day she will now turn it to something else and insult me. All those things are signs of low self-esteem. So remember, what is happening is that your spouse is trying not to be vulnerable. I greet you, Lucy. How are you doing? Your spouse is trying not to be vulnerable towards you, to be open. But you see, in marriage, you're supposed to be vulnerable to your spouse. That's the one person you need to be vulnerable to, your spouse. Let's move on. Number 5, avoiding open communication to prevent conflict or rejection. Do you know what open communication is? Open communication means you freely share ideas, you have discussions, so your mind is free. You're not withholding. There's a way someone will be conversing with you, and you know that this person is withholding a lot of things. The person is not being open. The person is listening to your own tales. The person is not telling his own tales or her own tales. That's not open communication. So when your spouse is always averse to open communication, where both of you can laugh and talk about everything, but he quickly shrinks in or she quickly shrinks in, is another sign of low self-esteem. So these are 5 signs that your spouse has low self-esteem. But please, let's go back to what I started with, or one of the things I started with. I said to you, and I want you to all listen to me very carefully, because I don't want a situation where you will leave this class and then go home to cause more trouble than is already there. Now, I said at the beginning, I said you need a high level of emotional intelligence to help your spouse who has low self-esteem. So the things I'm telling you here are not the things you now go and stand in front of your husband and say, hey, I know what is wrong with you. What is wrong with you is low self-esteem because you do A, B, C, D. I tell you the truth of the matter, that will be probably the last discussion you have with that person. Person will blank you. So you need to ensure you put your own emotions in check while you are trying to deal with your husband or your wife's low self-esteem. This is very, very important. It is too important to ignore. So let's now go into the causes of low self-esteem. What are those things that cause low self-esteem? And I need you to listen very carefully, because as I'm mentioning these things, you can start thinking of your spouse, things that happened to your spouse before you got married, that he or she told you about, things that have happened in the marriage. These things will give you a pointer to where this low self-esteem started from. Number 1, childhood experiences. Childhood experiences. Childhood experiences can be very, very negative. They can make people behave in such a way that is inconsistent with the normal way of behaving. If a child or an adult, when he was a child, was constantly being criticized, shouted upon, beaten, given things that they knew he could not achieve or she could not achieve, those experiences will haunt that child till the child grows up. So you want to check, has your spouse told you about his childhood? Look, one of the things that I do in premarital counseling, and by the way, we run premarital counseling one-on-one classes, with clients who are about to get married. And one of the things that I kind of always tell them is, before that wedding day, both of you should talk to each other. If I write each other and tell each other the things that you feel that person needs to know about you. And that includes everything. Your spouse is supposed to be the one who knows everything about you. Supposed to be the one who knows everything about you. So you need to ensure that if that was not done before you got married, then right now, both of you sit down and tell each other. It will help. Because you see, when you tell your wife about what you went through, she will now see reasons why you behave the way you behave and not start getting angry, but instead become empathetic. When you tell your husband about how you grew up, it helps your husband to actually display a lot of empathy. So this is the reason you need to actually tell each other about your past. So childhood experiences can be a big cause of low self-esteem. I tell you a story. As a child, I was very talkative. When I say this, people look at me and they're wondering, are you sure? Yeah, I was very talkative. In fact, I was one of those children that when visitors come into my house, I'll go and sit down with them and ask them questions that my mom will be using. Those Nigerian moms will be using I to tell you, come on, leave this place. So I'll ask them questions. For instance, if you came the week before with your wife and then you came alone, I'll sit down with you and, is your wife sick? Wife in hospital? So I was very inquisitive, extremely inquisitive as a small child. Of course, that put me into different kinds of troubles, but I continued. Now, there was a point in my life that I actually stopped becoming inquisitive. And what happened, in summary, was that I tried to be brave in a situation. And when my own dad heard about it, he walloped me. Walloping, beating. Because in trying to be brave, I put myself and my junior brother and my nephew and the help that was in the house, I put all of us in danger. Maybe I should tell the story so that you understand what I'm talking about. So there was a time when my dad worked in the university, and I'm sure some of you have heard this story before, in the University of Abuja. And the VC students liked him more, and they wanted to get him out of the university because it was like a threat to that administration. And so on that day, they decided to come to eject us from the university quarters. And they came with about maybe 20 to 30 local security men. They call them Yambanga. For those of you from the north, Yambanga. They brought Yambanga, knives, sticks, and everything. So I saw them in our neighbor's house. Was a professor also, and was one of those they wanted to eject. They wanted to eject all the professors because they had spoken against the VC. He was running the place like an empire, and all of them were all experienced, and they were saying this is not the way to run a university. So we saw them I saw them in the house, before hours. They went there, they were just vandalizing things. Now, in my James Bond mind, I felt that I could scare them. Watching movies, watch the movies that your children watch. It gives them ideas. So one of the things I did was I quickly told my brother, my dad had a camera, a Kodak camera. I still remember, a very powerful Kodak camera. And then he had a set of binoculars. So I told my junior brother then, we were very young then. I think I must have been, how old was I? Probably about 10, 11. Yeah, about 11. So I told my junior brother, you know what, let's scare these people. Let's do as if we are videoing them so that they will be afraid and they won't come to our house. So we brought out the camera, brought out the binoculars. Then I also came up with this idea that let's also scare them like we have some idol in the house. And so there was this log of wood in the house. We poured paint on it. We did, look, children are very imaginative. Oh my God. We did all this in split seconds. We put the log of wood there, poured things on it, paint on it to make it look as if it was blood, and started videoing them, or attempted to video them anyway. It was just a still camera. I had nothing, no video capability. Man, when these people saw us, they rushed us. They rushed us. The way they were coming, I knew that doom had come. So I rushed in, carried my brother and my nephew and the house help, rushed in, pushed my nephew and the house help into the toilet, locked the door. And then by the time we were coming out, my junior brother, they were already in the house. They had broken the door, they had broken down the door, removed the window, slapped my brother, removed everything, and then left. So I'm sure you understand why my dad was upset with me. Even though if he had better parenting, he would have known that this boy doesn't need to be beaten. This boy needs to be spoken to. So he beat me that day when he came back and the neighbors told him what we did. He beat me. And that broke something in me. And I stopped being inquisitive. I stopped being forward for a while. But eventually, I got my mojo back. So you can see me now, I'm forward again, right? So along the line, I got my mojo back. But I just told you this story, and I'm sure many of you have this kind of stories, things that happened to you in your childhood that probably truncated your ability to have high self-esteem. So the same thing would have happened to your spouse. That's why it's important to hear what your spouse has to say. Another thing that causes low self-esteem is negative talk. Negative self-talk. Negative self-talk. When you keep talking negatively about yourself, before you know what's happening, your speech becomes your reality. Your speech becomes your reality. So negative talk can also cause low self-esteem. Number 3, comparison. Comparison. Oh, this is a big cause of low self-esteem. When you are always looking at the other person and you're always feeling, oh, wow, we all came out of school together, so what's happening? That is a big cause of low self-esteem. So it's possible that your spouse is always comparing himself or herself with some other people, and of course, there will be low self-esteem. The next one is past trauma. Past trauma. This is closely related to childhood experiences, but past trauma must not be in childhood. You might have been an adult and you had trauma. Somebody bullied you, somebody beat you, something happened to you, you were arrested or doing something. Those things can break you and make you scared of even trying. So past trauma. Past trauma. Another one is facing repeated failures. Facing repeated failures. And I greet you, Adedamola. So when you keep facing, or when your spouse keeps facing repeated failures, failing in exam, failing in life, failing all around, that can actually cause low self-esteem. That can actually cause low self-esteem. Number 6, previous relationships. Previous relationships. So previous relationships and the things that happened in the previous relationships might have caused low self-esteem. If the person was abused, whether it's physically, emotionally, in previous relationships, when the person now gets married, the person may now have a problem with self-esteem. So somebody has already made the person feel lower than self, and then the person will have a problem with self-esteem. That is another challenge. And the last challenge is physical challenges. Physical challenges. So one other thing that can make people have low self-esteem is when they have physical, for instance, they are too fat. Their hair is not growing well enough. For the men, they don't have beard and they are 30 and above. So a lot of things happen that your body, you feel that your body should be a particular way, and it is not that way. That actually gives some people a lot of low self-esteem. So these are 7 things that give low self-esteem. Now, let's now start wrapping up with knowing the ways you will help your spouse to get out of low self-esteem. We've already spoken about the general signs of low self-esteem. We've spoken about the signs that your spouse has low self-esteem. We've just concluded now the causes of low self-esteem. So we want to look at how you can actually help your spouse to get out of low self-esteem. And before we go into that, we're going to take a short water break so that we can just relax a little, and then we come back immediately after that and immediately begin to talk about how you can help your spouse get out of low self-esteem. So keep watching and keep tuned. We'll be back in just a minute. There are many decisions to make in life, like choosing the right school, picking a career path, or even crossing the street. These are moments that shape your journey. But there is one decision, one choice that stands above the rest. Who will you marry? You can make mistakes along the way. You can take the There are many decisions to make in life, like choosing the right school, picking a career path, or even crossing the street. These are moments that shape your journey. But there is one decision, one choice that stands above the rest. Who will you marry? You can make mistakes along the way. You can take detours, and you can always rise again. But when it comes to choosing a life partner, there's no room for mistakes. This is a decision that will impact every aspect of your life, and it is one you can't afford to get wrong. Are you dreaming of the perfect marriage? It's time to wake up and start building that dream. Marriage isn't always a fairy tale. You can create a beautiful, lasting partnership. Avoid the heartbreaks, the uncertainties, and the regret by arming yourself with the tools for success. Take the first step towards a marriage built on a solid foundation. Register now for premarital counseling by the Married Seal Academy. Knowledge is the key to the love you've always dreamed of. Okay, so we're back, and you are welcome back. And we have been talking about this important topic, helping your spouse navigate low self-esteem. Helping your spouse navigate low self-esteem. Did you watch that advert? Yes, I'm sure you have young ones or younger ones or anybody, colleagues, friends who are about to get married. I ask you to, encourage them to come for premarital counseling. Now, premarital counseling is to marriage what driving school is to driving. So if you get into marriage without getting the requisite knowledge for marriage, you are going to mess yourself up. And that's why it's important that you learn what marriage is before you get into marriage. For some of you who are listening to me, you didn't have that privilege of having premarital counseling. And you know how much you've struggled in your marriage. Because marriage is not supposed to be a struggle. Marriage is supposed to be a smooth sail. And for all the people that I have actually done premarital counseling for over the years, all of them have good marriages right now. So start encouraging the people that you know. Some of you even have children that are about to get married. Encourage them to come for premarital counseling. And you want more details about premarital counseling, see the link that is scrolling, the number that is scrolling there. And I'm sure very soon the team will also put up how to register for premarital counseling on the screen so that you can register for your children. Ask the people who you know who want to get married to register for it. It's always one-on-one, so I take couple per couple, so it's not group. And I do it personally. I sit down with them and tell them everything that they're supposed to expect in marriage, so that when they get into marriage, whatever it is that they need will be delivered to them. So please reach out to as many people as possible who actually are about to get married. Nobody should get married without doing premarital counseling. I say it again. Nobody should ever get married without doing proper premarital counseling. All right, let's go on to what we have been talking about, helping your spouse navigate low self-esteem. Now, here are 10 ways that you can actually help your spouse to navigate low self-esteem. So do you have a husband or do you have a wife who has exhibited low self-esteem? Here are 10 things you can do to help. And before I go into these 10 things, please invite somebody. it's not too late to invite somebody. Invite somebody right now to watch this particular video, because this is going to help somebody. It's going to help many marriages. Some of you have been complaining, my wife is always having low self-esteem, my husband lives on low self-esteem. Perhaps this is what your spouse needs to know. So what you need to do is you want to listen to these 10 things that will help your spouse have better self-esteem. And you are the one who is going to be instrumental to making sure that that happens. So let's move on. Number 1, ways to help your spouse improve self-esteem. Number 1, affirm your spouse regularly. Affirm your spouse regularly. This is very, very important, because you see, your spouse who has low self-esteem already feels low and not confident about self. One of the things you want to do is affirm him or her. And affirmation simply means picking out the strengths of that person and, pointing them out regularly, reflecting it so that the person can see it in a mirror. Telling the person, oh, you're beautiful. Telling the person, oh, you did this particular task so well. Now, that is actually how you affirm someone. Please never lie to your spouse. Did somebody hear me? Never lie to your spouse. And my beautiful wife is here. I greet you. She's been in a class, and I greet you. Thank you for joining us. Now, never lie to your spouse. What am I talking about? That I said you should affirm your spouse does not mean you should now go and tell your spouse the things that are not in him or her. That can actually be dangerous, and that can backfire. Because when your spouse now realizes, for instance, you tell your spouse that in your office, you are the best lawyer there. Now, if your spouse now gets there and now finds out that there's a lawyer better than her or better than him, that may be a challenge, because it will look like you lied to the person. Remember, this person already has low self-esteem. So instead of saying you are the best lawyer in your office, you can simply say you are a damn good lawyer. You are a great lawyer. You are the best lawyer I have met. So be careful with people who have so low self-esteem, so that you do not lie to them, but you are able to still affirm them. So look for those strengths, those things that are true in them, those things that actually reflect who they are. And those are the things you should focus on and affirm your spouse on those things. So the first thing you should do to help your spouse improve self-esteem is to affirm your spouse regularly. The next thing you need to do is to correct in love. That's the next thing that you need to do. So when your spouse has done something wrong, please, even if your spouse doesn't have low self-esteem, you correct in love. You don't correct your spouse like you're talking to a dog or you're talking to an animal. Your spouse is a human being like you. And how many of you did that course, Improving Communication in Marriage? That's where we said your spouse is a human being like you. Did you do that course? Put it there in the comment section if you did that course, Improving Communication in Marriage. It's a game changer. If you know the testimonials I've had from last week to this week, just after that course, oh my God, people's lives are already changing. And if you didn't take that course, please look at the number that is scrolling on your screen and find out from the course how you will, find out from the admin how you will get on that course, because you can actually still catch a replay. So correct your spouse in love. Correct your spouse in love. This is very, very important. Some of us, yes, we want to correct our spouses. Yes, your spouse did the wrong thing, but the way your spouse or the way you are correcting your spouse is wrong. So the how, remember those of you who did the course, and I can see those of you, Cordelia, I see you, Chinonso, you did the course. Chinonso says it was a banger, I did it. So remember what we said, that there is a what to communicate, there is a when to communicate, and then there is a how to communicate. For many of you, your problem is the how you communicate. So ensure you correct your spouse in love, especially that spouse who is already having low self-esteem. Because the more you don't correct in love, then that thing, I told you one of the causes of low self-esteem. I said negative self-talk. So very soon, that your spouse will start talking negatively about himself or herself because of the words that you are saying. Number 3, the third way to help your spouse to improve self-esteem is to encourage personal reflection. Encourage personal reflection. Now, personal reflection, not personal reflection, personal development. Sorry about that. Encourage personal development. Now, personal development means looking for ways to always improve yourself. Looking for ways to improve the way you talk, the way you dress, the way you do your work, the way you do time management, the way you spend money and manage finance. It's endless. So keep encouraging your spouse to actually develop himself or herself personally. When you are going to do a course, a personal development course, encourage him to join. Encourage her to join. When you want to read a book, let me tell you something about reading a book. Let me tell you something very interesting about reading a book. So when you want to read a book with your spouse, you can actually read a book with your spouse. And if you want to read this book, for instance, this is one of my books, Wife Manual. So you are reading this book with your spouse. Do you know how to read with your spouse? Let me teach you. This is how to read with your spouse, and it's very interesting for those of you who find reading a little bit difficult. And for those of you who are in the couples conclave, you know that this is one of the books we are reviewing today at our book review this evening at 8 p.m. So when you want to read a book with your spouse, what you do is you take the book and then you divide the book, probably depending on the kind of book, maybe into chapters or into pages. And so part of it, and then you hand it over to your spouse to read the next part. Then you explain to your spouse what you read before. Then when your spouse reads the next part, he or she explains to you what was read. And then both of you continue to do this seesaw of reading and explaining. Reading and explaining. That way it makes it interesting and it's not boring. And before you know what's happening, you are learning. And that's the ultimate thing. You are actually learning. So help your spouse to do self-development, personal development. Don't go on your don't go on your own and say, my spouse is not interested in personal development, so me, I'll just be developing myself and going. You will actually continue to increase that low self-esteem in your spouse. Beautiful. So let's move on. Number 4, listen actively. Again, if you didn't take that course, improving communication in marriage, I'm telling you that you missed too much. So you need to go back and take that course. It will help you a great deal because we spoke about a lot of these things there. So listen actively to that your spouse that has low self-esteem, or that your spouse that you perceive has low self-esteem. Listen actively. Active listening means paying attention while you are listening to your spouse. Eyes focused on your spouse, repeating some of the things he or she has said so that he knows that you are there, removing all distractions. Leave your phone alone. Your spouse is talking to you. For God's sake, drop your phone. So if you listen actively to your spouse will feel like whatever I'm saying actually makes sense. And yes, my wife is excited. Book review this evening. If you are not in the couples conclave, I don't know where you are. You are married. It's just for the married. So if you are not yet married, don't worry. When you get married, come and join us. It's a big community of married couples that hold each other's hand and teach each other how to be married. So at the couples conclave, we hold each other's hands throughout the year and help each other to be strong in our bond. So there at the couples conclave, we've spoken about a lot of these things like active listening. Number 5, ask for input. Ask for input. And Adedamola says, thank you for that reading tip with my spouse. Yes, it works. It works like magic. You know, when we just got married, Just a few weeks after we got married, my wife was writing her master's exam all the way in Ogbomoso. So I traveled with her. And what we were doing was that I'll read one paper. So if she has like two papers in the day, she'll read the night before, she'll read the paper she has in the morning, while I read the paper she has in the afternoon. So when she comes back from writing that paper in the afternoon, I will teach her. Yeah, I will teach her the paper she's going to write in the evening. And then she'll go and write it. And it worked. She came out flying colors. So you and your spouse can actually read and make a lot of sense from reading. Okay, so the next thing that I said is ask for input and guidance. Ask for input and guidance. That's your spouse that has low self-esteem. One of the ways to raise his self-esteem or raise her self-esteem is to constantly ask for his input or her input in the things you want to do. And guidance. When that spouse knows that what he says or what she says is important enough for you to consider, it begins to lift his self-esteem or her self-esteem. It begins to lift self-esteem. So ensure that you actually ask for input from this spouse. Now let's move up. Number 6, show interest in hobbies and passion. Show interest in hobbies and passion. Whatever it is that your spouse likes to do, show some interest in it. When your spouse that has low self-esteem knows that you are interested in that game, that thing he likes to watch, that news he likes to listen to, interested in strolling out, on going mountain hiking, driving around, when your spouse sees that you are interested, it helps your spouse to build self-esteem. And before you know what's happening, because you, who is the closest person to him or her, is now interested in what he does, he feels that it makes sense. So show interest, please. Show interest in your spouse's hobbies and passions. I know some of you joined late this particular class. There are so many things. In fact, I told a story that you need to listen to at the earlier stage of this class. It's going to help some of you because it will help you understand that somebody can have childhood experiences that will actually affect him. So that your spouse, instead of being angry and upset with your spouse because of low self-esteem, you will begin to have empathy and begin to help that spouse. So please, immediately after this, just go back and start rewatching from the beginning. It was a packed class, or it has been a packed class. So, number 7, set realistic goals. Set realistic goals. So, don't tell that person that has low self-esteem, don't go and give something that you know that he cannot do or she cannot do. That will be wickedness. At the point in time, or at that point in time, always give goals that you know that your spouse can meet up to at that time. I'm not saying that your spouse will not be able to meet up with the goals later on. No. Your spouse will be able to meet up. But we're saying for now, please give your spouse, that's your spouse that has low self-esteem, give your spouse tasks, goals that he or she can do. Very, very important. Very, very important. Okay, so somebody says, I don't really like watching movies, especially war movies, but hubby likes it. Can I show interest in it? No, there are some things that you may not like. Movies, I understand where you're coming from. War movies can be very bloody. So I won't say you should now show interest in war movies. But there are other things he has interest in. So it mustn't be in all. Pick the ones that you know that at least you can manage to show interest in, and then show interest in those ones. Okay, so I hope I answered that question. So I mean, when you talk about something like war movies, it can be very bloody. My wife doesn't watch war movies either. They're too bloody for her. So you cannot be expected to now, concede, because that may give you trauma, even more trauma. But there are so many other things. So pick on those other things. Okay, yeah, pick on those other things. I know she has even said it. Me, I don't like war movies too. So she has said it. My wife doesn't watch war movies. I watch more war movies, especially ancient war movies, because I like the art of war. The art of war. So it's not the blood that I'm interested in. I'm interested in the thinking and the strategy that goes into those movies. Okay. All right. Good. So let's move on. Number 8. Help your spouse stay physically active. That's your spouse that has so low self-esteem. It's important that he or she is physically active, and it will do several things. First of all, it will keep that person fit, which keeps the person healthy, and that alone is important for someone that has low self-esteem. The second one is that it helps the person look better, especially if one of the reasons for low self-esteem is the person's look. So maybe the person is too fat. Exercise will help the person to slim down, and that will make the person now look better. And when he or she looks at himself in the mirror, feels good. So help them stay physically active by doing exercises. All right, let's move on. Number 9, avoid comparing them to others. Avoid comparing them to others. And Nena says, I show interest in football because of my spouse, not because I like it. And that's good. So at least football is not bloody, so you can learn to like it. So very good, Nena. Good job. So I said number 9, avoid comparing them to others. Please. This particular one can kill someone who even has high self-esteem. You can mess up that person's self-esteem by constantly comparing them to other people. So can't you see this other lady? You can't dress like her. Is she not a woman like you? Or you say, oh, can't you see that other man? You know, especially comparing your wife or your husband with your ex. I think it was in the last class that I said ex your exes, right? So I'm saying it again. And if you are angry about it, then it's good that I'm saying it. Ex your exes. Ex your exes. If you have said that this person is your ex and you chose somebody to get married to, please, can you let loose that person? Why must you still be friends with that person? And now, for some of you, you are now even comparing your spouse and saying, well, if it was Richard, Richard would have been able to get that money. Or if it was Anita dresses even much better than you. Why do you do that kind of thing? Don't do that. Don't do that to your spouse. Whether your spouse has low self-esteem or not, do not do that to your spouse. It's evil. It's wicked. Don't do it. So don't compare your spouse with somebody else. And finally, draw your spouse close to God. And if your spouse is already close, then draw your spouse closer to God. You see, one of the reasons people have self-esteem is when they do not know who they are. They have an identity problem. And the best way to know who you are is to know who you are in Christ. Did you get that? If you know who you are in Christ, then it will help your self-esteem. If you know that you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, you stand that way. And you can only know this if you are close to God. So it's not by going to church. That's not being close to God, though. Yes, that helps you to be close to God, but that's different. You need to be close to God, have a one-on-one, be able to talk to God and be able to hear from God. So you need to encourage that your spouse to get close to God. The closer he or she gets to God, the better he understands who he is in Christ, and then the better the esteem of the person will be. So draw your spouse close to God. And this is where we're calling it a wrap for today. And I'm so excited that you could be here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. I hope you got something. Did you get something? Please put in the comment section what it is that you got. If you got something today, before we go today, while I'm telling you about, what I want to say next, please put it there in the comment section what exactly you learned today. One thing, just one thing that you picked, put it there. We have 61 people watching live, or that's what I can see here, or maybe more. I need 61 responses, what you actually got from this class. While you are responding, please remember that if you have issues in your marriage, do not wait for those issues to go away on their own. They don't go away on their own. If you have issues in your marriage, you need to actually come for counseling. Now, I counsel couples every day of the week, Mondays to Fridays. So I'm always counseling couples. That's what one major thing that I do. And I want to ask you, please, if your marriage, you have tried and your marriage is not working, then please come and sit down. Let's have a conversation. Counseling is not what you think. When people hear counseling, they just think, oh, am I a crazy person? No, I didn't say come for psychotherapy. I said come for counseling. So let's sit down. Let's talk about the issues that are bothering you in your marriage. And let us begin to find a way out of those issues. That is what counseling does for you. So please reach out to the number that is on your screen. And thank you for everybody who is saying what you learned. Reach out to the number that is on your screen. And that number, just put counseling. If you put counseling there, they will give you all the details on whatever it is that you need for that counseling. So that you can come, we can sit down, we can discuss, and then your marriage will move forward. That's what happens after every counseling session. Your marriage moves forward because some steps on what to do, and then you begin to do them, your marriage moves forward. So thank you very much, everybody. It's so exciting to have you guys here, and I can see everybody. I'm just seeing a lot of things that you learned, a lot of things. So, too much. Somebody is asking a question, and our time is spent, but I will answer this question from you now. So she says, but what is the best way to do it in a situation where your spouse does not see it as a thing of importance? That's personal development. Yeah, one of the ways of doing it is make it fun. You saw how I just said read a book, right? That's personal development. So that book is like exciting. Everybody is waiting for the other person to tell him what happened next in the book or what the author said in the book. That is already you helping your spouse to read. So make it fun. And in the couples conclave, we are always having fun activities every week. It's intentional so that you can begin to have fun in your marriage. So you can turn anything in your marriage, including personal development, into fun. So that is the way to actually help your spouse who is not interested. I hope I answered your question. Good. Is this another question? Okay. So that's somebody saying thank you again. All right. So thank you, everybody. It's been good having every one of you here. God bless you. My name is Kunle Ologe, marriage counselor, founder of the Marriage Seal Academy. And thank you for being here at this Friday Live. See you again next Friday, where we'll be talking again about marriage. God bless you. God bless your home. If you didn't watch from the beginning, go and catch replay right now. See you next week. Please enjoy.